Welcome to Retailistic, the official podcast of Coresight Research for November 4th, 2025. This week, CEO Deborah Weinswig welcomes strategic foresight and innovation consultant Patrick Sobral. Patrick travels the world helping companies to develop strategies to make the most of new technology advances, particularly in the areas of generative and agentic AI. But before we dive into this fascinating conversation, let's review some of the exciting research publishing this week on Coresight.com. Our featured report this week is Gen AI to Agentic AI from Pilot to Powerhouse, a playbook for upgrading your AI game. We're releasing our Retail Media Innovator Matrix, where we'll introduce you to the top new players and analyze their differences. In this week's CEO Brief, our head of technology research reveals the latest functionality in intelligent inventory systems. Our series on third quarter earnings insights continues, and we're tracking consumer holiday plans and purchase behavior. Now, let's join Deborah and Patrick.
We're so excited to have you on the Retailistic show. Maybe just start by telling the audience, I know you from your deep knowledge of the beauty industry, but my understanding is it goes far beyond that. Maybe if you can let our listeners know a little bit more about your background.
Yes, but thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Patrick. I'm originally from Brazil, now based in Portugal, in Europe. I graduated as a chemical engineer, but during the graduation, I had the opportunity to live abroad for a year. I lived in South Korea. For my first time, I met people from different perspectives, different culture, and I saw that I was somebody who was moved for connections, networking. That's why we met. I guess we became friends so fast in the first event we met, right? And when I flight back to Brazil, I saw that's I wanted to have a position that could allow me to having those connections more and more. That's why I started working with consumer goods and retail since my chemical engineering graduation. So I've been working with, I worked with pharmaceutical, GSK, then later moved to trade marketing at Heineken. I worked for 2 years at Philip Morris in Brazil, and now my last passage was 4 years at Grupo Boticário doing innovation, consumer journey mapping, and also mapping how the AI will shape the beauty care in Brazil in the next years. Yeah, so been working with lots of categories, and now I'm doing my first move in consulting here in Europe as well.
How have you found the move to consulting? And as somebody who probably used to consume in either your role or group of others, information from consultants and potential next steps, how do you see it being on the other side?
It's been fun actually, because when you are the client, you are working in the big corp, and you are in-house consulting. You focus more in doing the stakeholder management. So the research part for me would be 1 or 2 weeks maximum, and then 2 or 3 months of stakeholder management to make sure I'm telling the right story that everybody agrees and is comfortable. When you're working in consulting, you have to think more about the client experience, right? Mainly now, I guess, when I talk about small consulting, and I think the advantage of a small consulting like the bakery or Coresight is that you can provide different experience for the clients that the big ones like BCG, McKinsey can do it. So we need to think much more about how the client will perceive the experience, and then how we will proportionate that experience for the client, and the whole operational work that will involve that with usually very short time frames. So for me, it's been fun because from day one, lots of work, lots of ideas going on, and you give the idea and you are executing it right next. While when you work in a big company, for example, this process is a little bit slower because the stakeholder management is more complex.
It's so interesting because If I look at your background and as I think about clients of ours that are similar, right? In many kind of legacy consumer goods companies, digital innovation is often in a silo or treated as like
Mhm.
nice to have. What structural changes have you found essential to shift from kind of like pilot mode to full scale innovation or rollout, or is that still a challenge?
I think that's still a challenge because I guess the silos they tend to exist in very big companies always, right? You always will have the micro culture, and when you work in a big company as well, I think people will always have like some thoughts about innovation areas, like how comes only they can innovate, we are not innovating, we are innovating too, right? So like you always need to make sure that you have an alignment with everybody who is innovating inside the company, even those who are not official innovation areas. And I think that balance is something that we will always be going, we'll always be searching, because there is no end point. Sometimes like one area will have more budget and a good timing to innovate, and then that will change according to the company's strategy. For example, Boticario, we used to work in the innovation lab, and then the innovation lab existed for more than 7 years. However, then the company decided to adopt the strategy of internalizing the digital core products. So the whole thing of like testing and prototyping with the startups and then later rolling out, we saw that it was not working well. So then we kind of pivoted into a foresight area for digital products to make sure we were generating insights for all the product management and helping them with the long-term vision of the product. But of course, when you talk about a consumer, a retail company and consumer goods company, and case of Boticário is a D2C company as well, you need to also think about the innovation of the products, people who are looking for how people will use the products in the future, what are the new categories we are entering, so then we can prioritize, for example, the new digital experience we want to create. So in the end of the day, I guess it's always like it goes back to stakeholder management, right? Make sure you are putting everybody in the same boards, and that show them that you are not innovating to them, you are innovating with them, that innovation is a job for it's everybody's job. However, you have people doing different activities depending on the area.
You said it so well. When I was at Lian Feng, we had kind of three, if you will, different think tanks, and I led one of them. Right, we were introducing a lot of startups to the organization. That ultimately, how we had success was, like you said, you were kind of working with the executive as opposed to trying to have them take on what you thought was the right thing to do. And ultimately, you probably got to the same place. It's just that working kind of more together, we tended to have greater success. And I think that your insight around the challenges sometimes of working with a lot of startups, because they're so different in many cases than the corporate environment, especially depending on how early they are, that can be difficult, and that pivot makes sense. What advice do you have for earlier stage companies who want to work with larger corporates, and what's the best kind of path for them to drive success?
Well, I guess the main one, be patient and plan very well your cash flow, because I mean, of course, when you work with big companies, you will close bigger deals, but they will take longer to close. And try to help the person who is working with you without the big company. It will be somebody from the, they will have a open innovation startups area, or maybe you're dealing with the business straight with somebody, the business in marketing or sales. You need to understand very well like that profile, because sometimes that area haven't even worked with a startup, for example, so they don't know how to work with startup. Maybe you need to educate them on that, for example, saying that the startup is a small company that doesn't have like such a big cash to spare to wait for it what ifs, for example, and then help that person to also help you, right, with the making the going through the steps like procurement, the NDA assignment, all the legal part of it. Make sure you are helping them remove the blocks that he or she will have it, because I have been not just like in my last position, not so at Portugal, but before at Philip Morris, I used to work with startups as well. And of all the companies, I've never seen like a 100% smooth procurement process, mainly when it comes to startups that you need like faster hiring process. You want test and learn fast. You don't need so much due diligence. And then like the person in the innovation area needs to educate all those people on that whole journey. But if sometimes you're not dealing with the innovation area, you're dealing with like business straight away, then even that person probably won't know this whole, we won't have this mindset, right? So I guess it's like all about be patient and trying to educate the person and help them to remove the blocks that they will have trying to run innovation inside big corporate. Usually, I think it would be very good if you are a startup, you have somebody who is coming from that background, because there are, independent of the industry, I guess, there are many things, many problems who are very common to it. And like somebody who is experienced on that, I really can predict those timelines and those problems that can come, right?
That makes so much sense. I do remember we had created like this startup park. It was amazing in Hong Kong. We had 12 startups. They were truly from around the world. And I ended up walking, we gave each of them like a room, and I walked with a lot of the executives, and I literally printed out like a list of questions to ask them. And I remember one of the executives was like, "Well, and how many countries do you operate in?" And the guy looked at me and I said, most startups, right? They're like, kind of focusing on one geography and their talents in one geo at the earlier stages. But it was interesting kind of how, right, when you look at kind of a large multinational and an early stage startup, right, like the differences in culture and just kind of how to work together. And like you said, right, these guys are burning cash, so they need to kind of close clients quickly. And that's a really, I think, important thing for people to know. Patrick, as you look at the innovation landscape right now, I mean, I would say, at least in my career, it's changing faster than we've ever seen it. How do you stay on top of what's important? How do you kind of tune out the noise? And how do you kind of help not only the companies you're working with, but how do you help others kind of drive success?
That's like have been one of the years I've been thinking more about like what's the future of my career, like what do we need to study, how is like innovation looks like in the future. Because yes, as I said, it's very complicated to say like in a big copyright, the innovation area, while indeed everybody's innovating, and now it's more and more easy to innovate with AI. We can even like find innovate inside and outside the company, right? Since you can easily have like one night job, vibe coding, whatever, what's your mind. So what's the future of the innovation area in all that? And I don't know the answer yet, but what I've been studying more and more is foresight methodologies, because in the end of the day, foresight's about exploring the certainty and upgrading your systemical thinking skills. And when you see that very famous matrix of the World Economic Forum about the future of work, that everybody was posting on LinkedIn from January until now, when you see like the top quadrants, basically all the insights that are there, creative thinking, systemical thinking, they are foresights. They are the core skills of foresight methodologies. So I'm trying to learn how can I help companies run scenario planning sessions, navigate the uncertainty, and then turn that into strategy, and do that fast and continuously, not like one very cool PowerPoint that we're gonna use for five years. That doesn't exist. You run scenario planning, and then maybe like in 3 months, something big would have happened that all the scenario planning could have already gone away, and maybe we need to run again. So I guess that's what I'm investing a lot, not just in like the methodology, but how can I develop those skills as a professional to improve my decision making process in my daily life, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in many cases, the corporates want to kind of, if you will, slow down sometimes to speed up, right? So they want to take time to crunch all of the different ways to move forward. And then once they make the decision, we find, right, they want to move very quickly because a lot of it, like you referred to, is kind of getting to the decision. And so help like not only upskilling yourself, but along the way, kind of upskilling your client, right? And right, even if you're in a corporate, right, you have different clients internally. And so I would say we've found that it's been difficult for everyone in the organization to have the same level of intelligence when it comes to Gen AI. It's the thing is right. I mean, it's a daily education process, I find. And so, I've said to people, right, if you really want, it's like 90 minutes a day that you really need to allocate, but so many people don't have 90 minutes a day. So without that, how do you keep your team, your leadership, like how do you bring them along that journey, and what advice do you have?
I think like beyond only the Gen AI, only upskilling on Gen AI, I guess it's also about upskilling of dealing with uncertainty as a whole. Because like I think on the book I was reading actually for written by one of the ex-CEO of the consulting I'm working now. She calls less forecast, more foresight, because like forecast is which what it was has been running the whole big business now, right? You do run forecast to say, okay, that's how much you're going to grow in 3 years, and then you do a 3-year plans based on those forecasts. Until like I don't know, some years ago, those forecasts that have been pretty accurate. But now, who could have forecast the tariffs? Example, who could have forecast before that the pandemics or the advance of the Gen AI? So like think it's we need to of course we won't throw away all the models or everything that's been working so far, but we need to do that and keep also exploring the new, trying things that we don't know if it's going to work or not. And that when it comes to us like teams as professional, I guess it's always putting something on your backlog, your to-do list that you don't know if it's going to work, like a calculated risk. Like maybe I will try. I think if I have a task and I think it's boring or could be do better, let me try at least for an hour bit with the an AI with ChatGPT. And if it works, let me share with the team like what I have learned. So then like I encourage them to do the same. And then we keep sharing the learnings, because the thing about AI is that even though I believe we do have experts, because we have the people who are building it. Everybody's learning on how to implement in our own process, in our businesses, our daily life. So I guess one of the best ways to learn it is keep sharing, keep discussing what you did, what went wrong, what went right, and that's basically just the innovation process, right? Is like defining clear hypothesis, run the test, see if it works or not. If it works, why it worked. If it not, why it didn't work. Share the learning. Keep doing that. Be more tolerant to error, because, well, when it's everybody's learning and you have such a high level of uncertainty, there will be things you won't predict. And then that's the future right now, right?
No, I mean, it's what I found the most interesting, and we've actually written an unbelievable amount about beauty at Coresight in the past 6 months because, right, we're blessed that we get to move where it's interesting. And that, I mean, hey, right, we just saw the whole Kering L'Oreal deal. Like that was kind of a big deal, right? And what we've started to find is that while beauty product discovery kind of happens everywhere, purchases stay in a fairly narrow, let's say platforms, retailers, et cetera. And I think that's one of the things we found to be the most interesting, because you may think you're getting the sale, you may think you're getting the conversion, and this obviously extends beyond beauty. But as you start to think about consumer journey mapping, how do you think the consumer journey has changed? And then going back to, because when we started down this path of research, I was like, oh, wow, right? People can discover product in so many places because people like convenience, they'll just hit the buy button. But that's actually not what's happening, right? They're going back to kind of the trusted platforms or retailers. How do you think about the customer journey now? And then as we think about, kind of Gen AI commerce, how does that change things?
Yeah, that's for me. It was very interesting because I joined like Boticário in 2021. So like it was a pre-Gen AI area. Everybody was talking about only digital and how can we do recommendations. So lots of quizzes. It was to help the consumer. And right now, I guess everybody has its own AI consultant. And basically, like, I think the main consumer pain points is what's good for me. In such a bigger and bigger portfolios, all the cosmetic brands are building, right? So that they can talk to the AI, ask how many questions they want, get the information, and then go to the store to discuss that with the specialist. So I think that's the thing that's changed more in the journey, because before you would only look for reviews, the product page, go to the blog, the brand's blog, ask your friend. Now you can do like very basically like a skincare consultation with the AI, and then you go to the store with another level of knowledge that you would never you wouldn't have before. So like the sales team, they need to be prepared for that, because when you talk about multi brands, for example, you have the sales team selling makeup, skincare, perfumery. Nobody's expert in all that. Is that team, will that team be prepared to also answer all those questions and make the consumer sure that the product he or she is buying is actually good for him? And the journey doesn't stop there, because after he or she buys it, then, for example, if I talk about a skincare product, if the brand promise have results in 7 days, the consumer will take a picture of it and maybe put on ChatGPT and then ask if it's actually working or not. Well, it can put on ChatGPT on your own brand's digital product, skincare recommendation. It's up to the brand's what the brand is providing or not. But it doesn't that the search for information won't stop after after the purchase. They will keep testing and looking for answers even after. So then in the second to the repurchase can come or not. So I think that's it, like all about education. The whole consumers, they were looking for education about what product is good for their own routine. Now they can find the information, but they will be looking for that information during all the consumer journey cycle, not only the path to purchase. And that's also very interesting that's not only for cosmetics. I've been studying lots of healthcare now, and basically the journey is more or less the same. People, they have a disease, they look, have symptom, they look for ChatGPT, they already have a lots of answers. Then they go to the doctor with lots of assumptions that sometimes are wrong, and that can even give a hard time to the doctor, because sometimes the consumer will trust even more the patient now will trust even more the doctors than the AI than the doctor, which can be a problem in the journey. Then the patient will run the exam, a blood test or something like that, and before going to the doctor to see the results, he or she will ask the AI what are the results. And sometimes, depending on what the AI is saying, they won't even go back to the doctor, because, oh, the AI said I'm fine, I'm not dying, so why should I pay for a second appointment with the doctor? Which could be wrong as well. So, yeah, I guess we need to That's what's changing most of the consumer journey through all the categories, right? The look for the way you can find access to information that's so easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's there was a lot of concern that employees who had been, let's just say more of the older millennials and X, there was a lot of concern around people losing their jobs. But instead, what we found, and it's interesting, is that because there's so much nonsense that comes out of these different large language models, that you have to almost have a certain amount of time in your career to either know that it's baloney or not, to ask better questions or more questions. And I think you brought up something that we've seen too, right? Everybody has their own like AI consultant. I mean, hey, it might be an agent you built, but right, like everybody's got somebody telling them different information. And so I think, I don't know if you, I like, it was, I was at this conference last week, actually, it was a board meeting. And I talked to a few people because I had gotten a call from a client actually. And he was like, it was very personal. He's like, I think I'm like losing my mind. He's like, I can't remember anything. And I said, like, let's, take a deep breath. I appreciate you calling me, right? It was like one of those like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And I said, let's talk about how you spend your day, right? I said, you get up in the morning, right? Like the whole, like eat your breakfast or not, whatever. And what we figured out is that his consumption of, right, video, audio, the amount of time he's spending on like large language models, that has grown significantly over the past 6 months. And so I said, your memory, right? Like it's like a hard drive, right? There's only so much storage. And I said, especially right with a lot of video content, right? It's just, it gets full really fast. And so I said, try, right, no video, no audio, read. And so he called me today and he's like, I'm already remembering things so much better. And so I don't know if you found, because we've had some others, people are like, oh, they didn't follow up with us. I don't think they intentionally didn't follow up. I think they just have like a million things going on. And it's becoming increasingly difficult for people to remember, right? That's why even like during our call, if you saw like writing down, like if you say something interesting, because I want to make sure I remember it. And I find for at least myself, if I touch kind of like pencil to paper, it's much easier for me. And I don't watch TV or I'm not huge on social media. But I do think that one of the things that's becoming increasingly challenging is how you work with clients. Because when you're doing a readout or when you're doing a presentation, right, you may have said some of this before and you're like our team was like, do we mention that we said it before? Do they remember that we talked about it before? And then how do you introduce new information to build on, okay, we've got to remind you what we taught you. Now I have to teach you something new. How much can people kind of consume? And then what do we do about it, right? So we've got the old information, new information, and now we have to take action steps. That's a lot of parts on top of an individual who's already overwhelmed by information. Patrick, one of the things that has always attracted me to you is like a brilliant individual is you remember all of our conversations and you remember what we talked about, and then you're able to build in each case on those prior conversations. How do you kind of protect your own kind of gray matter? And how do you think about, from what you've learned about yourself, how do you help other people take the new information they're getting and take action?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I've been feeling that too about the AI is very tricky because it can makes you feel that you are learning a lot, but actually you are not. Because like you spend like doing like 2 hours doing lots of interactions, and then you went very far in the galaxy, like with mega trends and lots of new information. But then like 2 hours later, you don't remember anything that you were discussing there because you didn't even have the time to download. That's why I think I also tried like a couple months ago using only like the note takers instead of writing on my notebook. It was a total disaster because at least for me the my notebook writing thing is not that I will look at it learning after. Is that so I make sure I'm pay attention and I'm memorizing what I'm discussing, the key points. So I guess like when you do a research on AI, for example, you need to think of a moment, you need to think of strategies for doing that. Like run a deep research with ChatGPT, cool, but then take a moment to actually read. Write what are the key points that you want to remember and that you want people to remember. Good strategy also is like read using that. If you think that the content is good, trying to go through that content in different formats, and that even the AI can help, right? You can upload a deep research on Notebook LM and then create a podcast that we will hear everything again with a different tone, but while you are at the gym. I guess that's one of the best way to filter the signal from the noise. If you find a signal and you think it's a signal, make sure you memorize that signal. So read it again, write, listen to the podcast. And I guess one of also the best way to actually internalize it is share it with people. So discussing with either internally or with friends or in conferences your what you've learned, and that's why and that's also one of the most important parts, because in the end of the day, if you spend, I don't know, 50% of your day with ChatGPT talking lots of things, the the time you spend with people talking, like the sessions I have with you, Deborah, every month, talking about the trends and what we are discussing, those were the most memorable times in the end of the day, and that makes your I think it's easier for your brain to memorize. So when you talk about when going back to consulting, that's why I think now creating memorable experiences for the client
Mm.
is more important than ever. Because, I mean, they know that like part of the job that you did to get that information was using AI. He could have done that as well using AI. So why is he there talking to you instead of doing the research themselves? Because you're providing them a memorable experience that he will go get out with something that he remembers and he wants to share. And then if he wants shares it with other people, well, first it's good that he will actually remember, and it's good for you maybe as a consultant or internal consulting that you get referrals, and then referrals can later become other projects as well, right? And even in-house consulting or innovation area, we are always looking for people who wants to work with us, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you bring up something that isn't talked about enough, but we're definitely seeing the trends, right? This idea around community and experiences, because I think that maybe what we realized during the pandemic is that how we attach information is to a conversation with somebody, is to an event, is to an experience. And now, like you said, there's days where I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about something. Let me kind of do research, and I do find it starts to get very repetitive. I'm using large language models, and more I'm like, we've been designated as a developer for most of the larger tech companies, so we have access to a lot of research. And when I'm reading a white paper, I find that it could just be how the information is structured. It could be just how it looks on a page versus I'm just reading like what looks like a blog. But I do find that it's easier for me to kind of imprint some of those. And so, right at Coresight, right, we're still kind of publishing 2 to 3 pieces of proprietary research a day. Some of it, it's interesting. Some of it is in more of a traditional like report format, and some of it is more kind of like HTML bloggy. And I do think that people remember the reports more.
Mm-hmm.
It's I hadn't thought about that until this this is why these are so good. I hadn't thought about it until this conversation, but I do find when I see people like, "Oh, I read that report," and they're attaching something to something that looks like a traditional report, right, with infographics and whatnot that they can easily kind of like recall. And so, as you think about how people are learning, how they're retaining information, how you're doing it as well, as you start to think about a lot of the changes that are occurring in the industry, how do you figure out where to spend your time? How does your personal life influence your professional life? And
Okay.
then, right, from your professional life, how do you kind of figure out what information to share with people at what time? Because there's just so much kind of coming in and so much that's new every day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think nowadays I think I try to prioritize the time I have with people and and actually be there 100%. So it's more, I think, I guess, of a mindfulness thing of like, if I'm in a meeting, I won't be out tabbing because I guess like the meeting is the moment that I will have the connection. I will have something that is not the gigantic flow of information, of texts, and all the key, the bullet points, the reading that the AI, for example, is providing. So I guess like I try to make sure I talk to people who will stimulate my ideas and who will bring different perspectives, either in my personal life or in my professional life. And in those moments, I try to be really there. I guess that's like where I've been, that's what I've been prioritizing my focus because, yeah, when the flow of information, like textual, mainly videos, etc., is infinite and it's never going to stop. So, like, I guess the moments that we have to share and to learn from the others and get the others' perspective, so then it actually fits in your head. All those insights, they become more and more important. Like go back, for example, to consulting example. I guess like the whole desk research, the whole actually looking for information part, searching for information part, it's first, it got faster and faster. Like you do that in a whole week, you become a specialist in any segment. But anybody could do that. The clients, like the business area. What's different? What nobody can find on the ChatGPT or the Deep Research? Insights that you generate talking to people. Then you run like 20 interviews. You go talk to your colleagues internally. You go to an event. All those insights are the things that are the insights that won't be in a deep research that will help you write create the experience and write the a good storytelling, a memorable story that will stay on people's minds, even though even with this whole flow of information, right? And also, I guess it needs to be simple, right? I think that's being true for even before the AI. Mainly, we were talking to executives, and that's one of the cool things about being working in innovation areas since I graduated, because you need to toughen up that to talk with executives since you were just graduated, and be ready to receive no's and to be very sharp on your information, because that person will have 20 minutes with you and then a bunch of other meetings. So why that person should remember that 20 minutes he or she has with you? Well, it needs to be simple. It needs to be interesting for them, I guess.
Well, I think I think you bring up why infographics are so important. And it's something that we've really leaned into because, right, if we write like a 20-page report and then we can summarize it with one image,
Mm-hmm.
and if the image, right, we know if it resonates, especially if there's like letters, right? If we have like a best framework and we have a core framework and whatnot, an encore. And so I think that if people can then attach all of this information to one image, and then they can keep on kind of going, once they understand it, right? They can keep, and going back to, I think simple is important, not overcomplicating. If they can then take new information and attach it to this infographic, if you will, which is ultimately a report, which is ultimately a theory or hypothesis, I think that makes an unbelievable amount of sense. And then one of the things I've found that I've very much valued is these like closed door conversations like our AI council, because having a group of people that you trust to talk about your wins and your challenges, we'll put it, but those who can say like, I had the same thing, or wow, that hasn't happened to us at our company. Tell us like, what did you do and how did you end up there, so that, people can save time and money. And I think that as people are kind of moving forward, they're, and it goes back to, I think you've had a whole career of innovation. I mean, now you're innovating. What I think is so interesting, Patrick, about this kind of pivot is you're not only innovating yourself, you're innovating others as well. And so all that time you're investing in yourself, you're getting back 10x, don't you feel?
Yes, definitely. And like that's something that I see that comes even to my personal life, right? Because I feel that I'm always like helping people to think about the future. And sometimes people don't like to think about the future so much. They just going with the flow and fine, but which is fine. It can work for some people, but I think like we shouldn't be afraid to look at the future and to look for the uncertainty and like to actually I guess it can even help us to be less anxious about it because we see that actually nobody knows what's happening. Everybody's testing and learning. Sometimes people will do it right in one attempt, and at the second it won't work. We keep sharing those. If we keep sharing those learnings, those ideas of the future, we build the future we want to build together. And I guess if you don't look for the future, you just do things as you were doing, as you have been doing until before the pandemics, then doesn't matter what's your professional, your company, your role, you will get outdated because everything is moving very fast. So you need to keep trying new things and be aware that when you try new things, lots of them will fail. It's fine. Everybody is failing as well as everybody's also failing and also collecting the benefits of doing how to say in English, right things. So I guess that's it. Like not always find opportunities to look for the future together, share and have fun, right?
I love it. All right. So we're getting to our lightning round. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, rapid fire, and just kind of say what comes first.
Okay.
So, number 1, Brazil versus Portugal.
Brazil, right? I mean, I love Portugal, but I always say I didn't leave Brazil because I wasn't happy there. I left Brazil because, well, I've lived there for 27 years already, so the world is too big. So I need to know all the cultures. That's why I went to Korea. Then I went back to Brazil, lived there for more 4 years, and then I said, okay, cool, see what's going on outside. That's why I'm in Portugal now, but my heart will always be in Brazil. And like when I'm outside Brazil, I guess my persona is the Brazilian. First thing, to introduce yourself. I'm Patrick from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, land of carnival.
But, all right. Number 2, since you've spent a lot of time in beauty and now you're doing a bit more in healthcare, where do you think we are on the spectrum of the impact of GLP-1 and what do you think is ahead?
I think we still don't know the long-term consequences, the good and bad of the GLP-1, right? Because, well, I see that Brazil is one of the countries that is adopting it the more, and you have like a good consumer acceptance, but you already have already lots of like short-term consumer behaviors that are changing, right? You have people looking for specific diets, eating some lots of consumer products like snacks, candies, but also looking, for example, skincare specifically for those kinds of products. But I think we are just in the beginning of what in innovation we call wicked problems, right? Every problem that we have, most of the problems that we have now, they were created by a solution that we created to solve a problem before. So before the cars, we didn't have car accidents, and now we have it. And we are trying to solve them with robotic cars. So GLP is solving some consumer problems, but will definitely create other problems in the futures. And those problems can be it can be opportunities for new business models, not just actually exactly threats. It always depends about how you frame them. That's why I think developing foresight skills is essential for an organization and an individual.
No, we've talked about this idea around kind of, foresight with frugality, right? So that you're not spending, kind of just to innovate, but really to have foresight. So I agree with you. All right.
Mhm.
Number 3, Beauty and cosmetics, right? That's obviously very close to the consumer, highly experiential, filled with emotion. How does technology enhance or transform that category? Because I would say that many startups we work with, beauty is their first stop on the map.
I guess like beauty and fashion are two of the coolest segments to work with technology in retail because you have a clear consumer pain points that I guess it will always exist. Is that will that be good for me? Will that skincare actually be good for my routine? Will that perfume smell good on my skin? The outfit will that fit me? Is it going to match my skin mainly when they are buying it online? And although we do have technology solving that problem, as technologies evolve, there will always be a better way to do it, and that the consumer's expectations will rise, and then the technology will need to come after it. For example, perfumes. I still haven't seen a solution that helps me smell a scent of perfume online. I still need to go to the store, but at some point, I guess people will find it. So yeah, we have a clear consumer pain point that technology always try to coming up after it.
I can't believe you said that thing about the perfume. We actually have an intern who has developed something, and he's like, "Do you think there's something here?" I'm like, "I haven't seen anything else," which kind of tells me that there is. So I'm going to connect the two of you because I think that it's something he's obviously put a lot of hard work into, and really looking for kind of market fit. So that's great. All
I
right.
think that is a very big market fit on that idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's huge. All right, number 4, what do you think is going to have the biggest impact on the top line and the bottom line in the next 3 years?
I guess it's the shopper agents. I do think this is still a very underhyped technology, a very underhyped trend. People still don't realize the impact that having a consumer buying straight from a LLM will generating, like how they expect to see the information, how that purchase will happen, because the brands, they will need to make sure they are pleasing the consumer, but also the agent. And the agent can be different, will be different, because there will be the LLMs, which we already have a range of, like ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. Everybody can use their favorite. Plus the other agents that will be implemented in other interfaces, like, I don't know, like Alexa, Siri. So like that whole agent stack is going to be very difficult for the MarTech to manage, because the MarTech
Yeah.
teams, that you have to manage the whole agents behind the stack, in the corporate part of it, Salesforce and all the corporate applications. But all those applications, they will need to deal with different setups of agents that will go from different consumer purchase journeys, and I don't think we still can visualize the impact on that on the long term.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I also think it can help reduce returns, right? Especially in anything of size or color. And so that could have like a huge impact on the bottom line too. All right, number 5, as you kind of reflect back on your time with us today, what is your kind of one piece of advice for people who are trying to become more knowledgeable about Gen AI, not only in terms of how they can use it personally, but also professionally?
I guess find places where you can share what you've been you're learning with people. Not just go to the keynotes. Of course, we can have very insightful 20, 30 minutes keynotes, but the flow of information is so big. We are always impacted by so many videos and texts and audios and podcasts. The information, what you are actually learning, is sharing and actually teaching. When you go to the knowledge parent, right, is one of the best way to learn something. So go there, study, just share what you learn. And remember, nobody is 100% expert on everything that AI can do, because there are infinite possibilities and everything is moving so fast. So don't be afraid to commit mistakes, right?
But I always thought about it, like, it changes daily. If somebody slept longer than I did, I know more, right? Like this whole kind of environment, right, that we've truly never seen. And so, Patrick, thank you. I've never had time go so quickly, and I always learn so much from you. And thanks so much. We look forward to having you back again soon.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Deborah. It was super fun.
Thanks, Patrick. And thank you for joining us this week. Coresight Research serves our members with cutting-edge research, leadership communities, data resources, strategic advisory services, and more. Visit us at coresight.com to learn how a Coresight Research membership can accelerate your success. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.